as an interviewer myself, it's always weird when you're the one being asked questions.
Really?
Yeah. It's so much easier for me to just, ask questions because I'm so used to it. Like I've been doing it for, I don't know, since I started, which was like 2008. I
was 8.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. That's one way to go about it. No, but seriously, like it's always odd when you have to take off the interviewer hat and put on the interviewee hat. So yeah, let's just chill. You know
talking about that, because I've seen a lot of your interviews the past few, I think, years na din. Because you would always have this movie releases, the one also where you interviewed Anthony
Mackie.
Yeah, Anthony Mackie for Captain America.
Yes.
That was
Brave New World.
So can you tell us something about that experience? Like every time you face someone just like Anthony or kahit anyone basically, what's that experience like whenever you get to interview someone?
Well, I'm a big nerd. Always have been. Ever since grade school, I was reading comic books. Ever since high school, I was watching cartoons, animated films, and whatever. And so the first Marvel encounter I ever had was for Captain America Civil War. So that was Chris Evans, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, the director Joe Russo. I was terrified. As in, takot na takot ako. Kasi I mean, obviously, okay, it's one thing to interview people. And it's a totally different thing when you're interviewing somebody you're a big fan of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like parang kunwari, I don't know, for Swifties out there, it's like you're interviewing Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? Like, so it's such a huge, and you put them on this pedestal because you think, like ako, when Chris Evans came on stage, in my head, I'm like, that's not Chris Evans, that's Captain America. And by the time that I got to interview Anthony Mackie for the second time, which was for Brave New World, not naman to say that I wasn't nervous anymore, pero alam mo, I was kind of already used to it. I already knew what I was gonna go for. I already knew how it worked. But the first time kasi that, we were put in a press junket, they don't tell you a lot of things. Like for one, in my head, the interview would be something like this. But what they don't tell you is it actually happens in a small hotel room that is blacked out like anything. All the windows are covered because, they have to make it look like a studio and whatever. It's a very efficient line. Kasi nakapila kayong lahat ng interviewers from Asia Pacific, nakapila kayo lahat sa labas. And then they call you in. So parang, CK De Leon. When you enter, there's a chair and the artist is already there sitting down. And it's a very specific time frame of 5 minutes. When we say go, your timer starts, that's it. And you have all these ideas of like, syempre parang if na-meet mo yung idol mo, dahil mong gusto sabihin, di ba na parang, oh my God, I'm such a big fan, blah, blah, blah. But you have to fit in all of the questions that you have and factor in the fact that you only have 5 minutes and not a moment to spare. And then when I sat down, I remember this distinctly, it was Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. When I sat down, I wanted to adjust the chair a little bit. And then when I was about to adjust the chair, everybody was like, no, please don't move the chair. So alam mo yung parang, okay, I'm going to be super stiff here. And then like, wait, can I bring out my notes? Because all my questions are here. And then honestly, like the 5 minutes that I had, it was a blur. Like the first 2 minutes, because I had this whole idea of like, because Anthony Mackie started out, at least from what I know of him, he started out in 8 Mile. He was Papa Doc. Siya yung kalaban ni Eminem in the rap battle. I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to bring up Sebastian Stan and how he was in Gossip Girl. None of that happened. Because in the moment, like, biglang 5 minutes lang pala. So it's really, I guess, the first time you ever do it, it's surviving. And then once you learn how to survive, then you kind of fine-tune your process on how to actually interview them. Because you already know how it's going to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's nice because I actually thought na whenever you guys do the press junkets, I thought it was like a big event and then biglang isa-isa.
It starts off that way. So parang merong whole of Asia Pacific and then the artists are there in front. And then not everyone kasi gets these slots for the interviews, the one-on-ones. There are one-on-ones, there are roundtable interviews. If it's a roundtable interview, then that means there's like 8 of you and then the artists are there. So parang one example of that we got to do for roundtable was Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, and Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther. So they were all in the table and there were 7 of us. Tas iba rin yun kasi parang because you're not competing, but you're essentially sharing time with other representatives. Palakasan ng loob. Like parang if you want to ask a question, step up to the plate and ask. And it's so entertaining to see rin na they're very strict. Obviously, when you're dealing with stars of this caliber, bawal magpa-picture, bawal magdala ng paraphernalia na ipapasign or whatever. But you'd see certain representatives na alam mo yung wala akong pakialam, papasign ko to.
Dire-diretso na
Tas yung iba pa simple na in the table, there was a Black Panther comic book.
Yeah.
And then after the interview, Michael B. Jordan was just like, hey, who owns that comic book? And the girl was just like, oh, that's mine. All right, let me sign it. So alam mo yung without directly saying na please sign my magaling. May mga daya na ganyan na you'll learn as you go on.
So out of all of those experiences, out of all of those stories, was there ever a time yung talagang nag-stick sa'yo?
Paul Rudd. Like, he's a wonderful human being. Okay, I mean, obviously, like, when you're talking about, like, Hollywood actors, like, I love Chris Evans. I love Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan. Would have loved to interview Robert Downey Jr., but I was on my honeymoon when they did Infinity War in Singapore. But Paul Rudd, man, like, this is hindi mo na to time pero in Clueless with Alicia
Clueless,
Silverstone.
I know, but only the bida.
Okay, so that's Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah.
She had a brother. Yeah. Well, not really brother, parang half brother or whatever. Who was played by Paul Rudd. He was also in Friends and whatever. And, you know, he's a majority of people know who Paul Rudd is. And yun nga, like what I was mentioning earlier, when you enter the interview room, the artist is sitting down and then you just sit down across him and that's when you talk. With Paul Rudd, when I entered the room, he was standing up like by the door and he was saying, hey, I'm Paul. I shook his hand and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, of course I know who you are. You're Paul Rudd. And I think what I really liked about my interview with him is that majority of these interviews, you can only imagine what the artists are going through. Like you're asked the same question for multiple days and it's tiring, it's exhausting. Majority of the people, and especially especially if it's like a superhero film, the question is always like, what's your gym regimen? Because you're so buff. So paulit-ulit yan. Ilang beses na sasagutin yan na parang pagod na ako, ayoko nang sagutin to. And they're probably like jet lagged, you know what I mean? But Paul Rudd, like when you were talking to him and I was interviewing him, like it felt like just a conversation of normal human beings. It didn't feel like I'm an interviewer interviewing Paul Rudd. It just felt like Paul Rudd talking to Gino. Ganon. Tapos parang like, he was so you know how when you're talking to somebody, you know when they're actually listening. Yes. You know when they're actually just talking to you out of politeness. This felt like he actually cared about like the questions that I was asking. And it was just such a nice feeling to be able to have that. So immediately after the interview, one of his movies is called I Love You, Man. So I told him like, I just have to say this, man, but I love you, man. And he was like, oh, thanks. And then he was the one who told me, parang, yeah, let's take a photo together. Even hugged me. So I'm like, legit, that's Paul Rudd. So yeah, I think, and everybody in that interview who had the same opportunity that I did, mga seasoned interviewers na to like they were all stammered at how nice he was, how polite he was, how great he was of a human being. So yeah.
Loving the episode of Wired to Wander? For more stories abroad, travel hacks, and spot recos, don't forget to stay connected to our socials. Catch the full-length episode and discover how to make every trip smoother. Only on Wired to Wander, powered by Smart TRAVē.